Okay, we're live.
Good afternoon. Hi there. How are you? My name is Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you're watching The Rational Male 101. Today's episode is entitled Ghosting, Hypergamy, and Determinism. And I am joined by the godfather of the manosphere himself, the cult leader, Rollo Tomasi, the Rational Male. Rollo, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, man. Good to have you back, man. Been a week. We had a good show Friday. I thought that turned out pretty well. We were talking about Katie Hill and all that good stuff that was going on.
That's the gift that keeps on giving.
That I know, man. There's just so much to like unpack with that. It's not just about like poly. It's also about like just sort of the state. Like, well, what we talking about the sisterhood of Morales. We talked about victimhood. Yeah, victimhood is the automatic default, and then her last act of resistance is to vote against or vote for impeachment. Right. That was her last act of defiance.
Amazing how the husband's the bad guy in the whole thing. She accepted absolutely no personal responsibility whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was incredible. And what gets me is it's like you said, it's the gift that keeps on giving, and I think we're probably going to hear a little bit more about that. I don't think that whole story is quite over yet. She's going to come back in some way or some form. And
hell hath no fury like that of a woman scorned.
Yeah, we'll hear about that again.
The payback is going to be epic.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So let's get into ghosting here. So first of all, just sort of from the get-go, define what we mean when we say ghosting.
Okay, ghosting is it's a new term that's really kind of an internet term, I think. I mean, ghosting's been around for a long time if you really think about it. I should have called it up. I'll have to go dig up the video. There's this really great video called The Fadeaway, and it's by Garfunkel and Oates, which is these there's two chicks who are they're actually pretty funny for being girls, but they do these humorous videos, and one of them is called The Fadeaway, right? And it's like just how you kind of like drift away and you don't call the person, or they'll complain. It's written humorously from a woman's perspective. Like it's okay for a woman to fade away, but it's not okay for a guy to fade away, because usually it's in a female specific or female centric context. Like what works for them is okay, but what works for a guy is not okay. It's a double standard. But so I want to lay that out at the beginning here, because what ghosting is just basically deleting somebody from your life. And we've talked about this.
Yeah, when you said fade, though, I want to clarify here, because my understanding of ghosting, perhaps I'm off,
just cutting off,
is complete cut off of any contact whatsoever. You're blocked on social media. I've blocked your cell phone number. I've deleted every picture I've ever had, every email, every text message we've ever sent. You no longer exist. To me, you're dead.
Yeah, and I think I would say that's fair. Okay. And I think for men and women, ghosting is a little bit different, because remember, our mating strategies are different. And so for a woman to be invested in a guy who fades away or who ghosts her, that represents a loss of investment on her part. That because what would have had to have happened if she's upset about being ghosted on, it's usually because that guy got past her hypergamous filters, and she in some way thought something could happen, right? That's at the base minimum. Maybe she invested a whole lot more than that. She thought something else. Like perhaps it was a situation that she wanted to explore and she wanted to make the most of it, and the guy just cuts her off. Well, he's a jerk for doing that. He's an asshole because he, didn't break up with her in the here and now. I think there needs to be a distinction that's made here too. And just before we get into this, is that it's one thing to have had a relationship with a person, say for like 6 months or a year or something, and then you break up via text. That's one thing. I wouldn't necessarily call that ghosting. It's just sort of like, hey, I'm done, I'm out, whatever. Most guys that do this, or women that do this, they use the technology as a buffer against that. Actually being there, looking that person in the eye and telling them, hey, I'm breaking up with you. That's one thing. This is me. Okay. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily call that ghosting. Ghosting, I think, is when a guy and a girl get together and one of them decides to delete the other and say, and backs out, like gets cold feet, kind of says, you know what, this isn't going where I wanted it to. And it's easier for me to sort of delete myself from this person's life. And that's really what ghosting is just deleting yourself from their life. So it's blocking them on Instagram or blocking their social media, putting their calls on a block list. And unless you're going to go get in your car and go drive to wherever that person is, I think it's a thing now. Ghosting is a thing now because we have such well-defined digital footprints right now.
Right.
So if I've got a face, I mean, think about how much of our private lives are online that we voluntarily put online right now.
Right.
So think about all of the steps you would have to go through to ghost someone. If you have a Twitter account, if you have an Instagram account, if you have a Facebook account, maybe you have a Snapchat if you're a girl. All those things you have to find some way to prevent that person from getting any more information about you, at least as the person that you are. I mean, it's not hard to go and create a proxy account and like try to figure out what's going on with that person or what really actually happened. I think that ghosting, of course, is I don't want to call this just a millennial thing because I'm pretty sure there's probably some older people and actually it's probably some Generation Z people who've done the same thing.
And for the purpose of our conversation today, let's stick with long-term relationships, whether it's a long-term, you're living together or seeing each other, or mostly in marriage too. Because there's a number of things I want to address with this. Now you said sort of a millennial term, new. I have known, and I want to talk about families too, because it's one thing.
It's not just intersexual. Yeah,
I had students I taught. I've had friends who have been ghosted by their dad or their mom. Mom or dad just disappeared. Buddy of mine, his dad left everybody, his mother, the whole family when he was 12, and it's to him it's like a suicide. There's no closure. It's like, no explanation. What the hell did I do wrong? Why did you leave me, hanging here? No explanation. You're gone. I'm left with mom. Mom's just nuts right now. All that kind of stuff. That lives with you forever. Okay. So ghosting, especially if there's kids involved. And in this day and age, if you've been married, it almost isn't even practical, especially if you're going to be paying child support. You can't do that. I don't think you should ever ghost a child. Ever ghost a child.
No. Yeah. And I'm not, this is not, think of this as an analysis, not an endorsement. I hate that I actually have to say something like that. Like people would think, oh, he's telling everybody they should ghost. No, I'm not saying that. Right. We're analyzing this. We're trying to get down to the bottom of why these things happen and what happens. First of all, why do people ghost other people in the first place? I mean, if you look at like say the laws of power, and I think what was it? Is the law 48 laws of power number 10? I think is what it is avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. Right? Is that 10 or 12? One of those two.
I just retweeted that from the 48 Laws of Power today.
Yeah. And so at what point do you have to cut off your investment in a relationship with somebody? And I'm not just saying with a girl or that kind of stuff. What point do you have to say, you know what, I am no longer going to be a part of this family. I'm no longer going to be a part of this organization. I'm no longer going to be a part of this friendship or whatever else, because if I continue to do this, I'm going to get dragged down with this person. Ghosting, I think I think that's sort of the coward's way out, to be honest with you.
Bingo. I was going to take it back to even breaking up. If you're a guy and you're over 18 and you're breaking up with somebody that you've spent some time with, let's just say 6 months, and you do it via text, I'm here to tell you, you're a pussy. This is exactly what you are. You're a coward. You're a wuss. Any guy, especially anybody who proclaims to be an alpha, you owe it not only to them but to yourself, face to face. I'm out, and here's why. It may make you feel uncomfortable. There may be some crying, there may be some anger, whatever. But both of you have invested time. You would want the same. You as a guy, you would want the same. If you're gonna ditch me, I want to know why. Okay? What the deal is, because I can learn from that experience. But this idea that you can just text somebody, it's over, is absolute BS. And you're right. It's the coward's way out.
I think ghosting gets played people in chat are asking, who does it more? Like, is it when it's in an intersexual relationship? Like, who does it more? Is it girls or guys? And I think that it depends on how long that relationship has gone. Right. If a guy is more alpha and he knows he was like slump busting, or he was with a girl he would not necessarily have gotten with on a particular weekend, she gets his contact information and she expects something more more from that relationship. And then he sobers up on a Monday and he's like, whoa, what was I thinking? Why did I do that kind of thing? Then, yeah, I can see that. And you will hear women become more vocal about ghosting when it is a guy that is well above them, at least 1 point above them in sexual market value. And that's when they go, I can't believe guys do that. They're so callous. But okay, so that's one side. There's the other side, of course, where women will do the exact same thing to men. And women are justified in that because they're doing the same thing. They're saying, you know what, this guy is not the alpha guy that I thought he was. He's not the guy that I want to pursue in a relationship right now. I'm going to reject him even after I've already accepted him. How can I do that? Well, again, we live in a digital age and people are addicted to their buffers. And they need some sort of buffer or some sort of protection between actually looking that person in the eye or even just talking with them on the phone and saying, look, it was fun while it lasted, but I think I'm done.
All right, so you look around various articles and message boards, whatnot. Who does it more? I don't know, but I'll tell you who it bothers more: women. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Because it's part of the reason. It's the way how they say they don't want you to tell them everything. They want to figure you out. You leaving without an explanation is going to be the biggest mind F they're ever going to deal with for the rest of their life. Yep. Okay. So. And by the way, in order for ghosting to actually work, that woman had to be completely invested in you. She had to have that interest level. Because if the woman really didn't care, it's not going to matter. Okay. Then here's the other thing too, because I use this all the time. I say, don't listen to what people say. Watch what they do. All right. So if I were to ghost a woman, all right, I'm going to screw with her head, but it's also going to tell her that, you know what? I was really invested in you. This is how the woman's going to read it. I was really invested in you, and you hurt me so much. This is how I'm going to hurt you. And to me, that betrays you not as an alpha, but as a beta.
Yeah, I would say so. I think you're right in the sense that when the reason why women cry the loudest about ghosting is because if the guy got to the point where she was interested enough to try to start something with him, that means that the guy was high value enough, or he said the right things or did the right things to get past that hypergamous filter. And women, like I've said this in at least 4 different articles, women's existential fear is to get with a guy who presents himself as being alpha, presents himself as, but gets in underneath the radar, right? Gets in underneath the hypergamous filter, and she accepts him for whatever, face value. Maybe he's a good looking guy, but he's not, he's really a sandwich artist at Subway, and he's not actually going to make partner in the law firm. He sells him in there. So he presents himself as something that he's not. He gets in there and then he decides to back out. And it's exactly what you were saying here a minute ago is another thing I've always said is that when a guy breaks up with a woman, it is the highest form of DHV, which is demonstration of higher value, because what it says to her is you don't meet my qualifications. Because most times because 80% of guys are betas, because we have different mating strategies. Women are looking for quality, men are looking for quantity, generally speaking. And what happens is that existential fear means that guy got in under the radar and then he got out again. Yep. And so not only is it a missed opportunity with a guy who is of higher value, but it is also a confirmation that a guy tricked her, that a guy got in there and he really wasn't who he said he was, or he really wasn't into her, even after saying whatever, and he ghosts her. And then that is sort of like the insult to the injury, right? The injury is the fact that the guy got in there and he got, underneath her radar, right? And then he got out again. That I would say that you want to know why they cry the loudest about ghosting. That's it right there, because it means that their filtering system wasn't good enough. Yep. It means they had to fight, they will say it's a
not only were they not good enough for you, but their system to vet you.
Yes. So
I told you,
and that's an existential fear, man. That's like life or death into a woman's hindbrain.
We've talked before about the one that got away. I think I told you a story. I'm not sure we said it or did it on the podcast, or if I did it on my radio show. So my brother Charles is a fireman, right? And he got called to a fire back in Pennsylvania, where I used to live. And it was a retail place. And lo and behold, the lady that was the manager is a girl I used to date like 30 years ago. Okay. Mm-hmm. Charles said all she talked about, the building's on fire. All she talked about was me. Charles is telling me, he says, man, you dodged the bullet, because apparently she hasn't weathered all that well. And he says, I was half tempted to give her your cell phone. He says, but as your brother, I couldn't do that. But it's, you know what I'm talking about. The one that got away. There's women out there, they settled for whatever it is, the beta. But there was that one guy that I wanted more than anything, but he didn't want me the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's this, I think that getting in under the radar it's this fantasization, right? It's this, I finally met the right guy. I finally met that guy. Because think about that. When women tend to look for quality. Like I said, it may seem as if they are looking for variety, but really in looking for variety, they're looking for the quality of that guy. Whether that guy represents, alpha seed or beta need, those are the two qualities women would love to have together. But if that guy is high enough quality in either one of those, either side of the hypergamous equation right there, it represents a loss of investment. It represents a loss of opportunity. And that's the thing that really messes with their mind. So it's like in their minds, they're like, I almost had the dude. I almost had the guy. This was the guy. And so when you leave and when you exit, you erase yourself from her life. That is, so she's got to fill in the blanks at that point. And remember what I've always said is that a woman's imagination is the most powerful tool in a guy's toolbox. Yeah. And this, maybe this is a cruel way to do it, but it's a good illustration of what I'm talking about when it comes to women's imaginations, because they'll fill in the blanks. They'll go, well, what was it that I did? How did he get under my radar? It leaves them with more questions, and they have to answer those questions for themselves. Hey, I gotta answer this one here real quick. Dan gave us $100 here.
I was going to claim that. I get the $100 super chat.
All right, you get the $100 super chat.
You answer it. I'll take.
I'm going to put it on here, Dan and Vita. Wow, you know what? Let me tell you, this is answer to prayer here, because StreamYard has finally color coded super chats, and I actually saw this in StreamYard. Good job, StreamYard. Thank you. This is a new feature that they have here. So anyways, Dan Avita comes up. He says, HD dinner with his long-term relationship. Right. While we talked over dinner, all conversations was about her. I just realized all about her, had intuition, feeling that she is all about herself, came to the clarity that I have to leave. Okay. Not getting what I need emotionally. Can you explain how to listen to intuition? Okay. So here's, so let's put a hard stop on what we're talking about here. That's gut check. Yeah, exactly. One thing that guys do is they tend to ignore their intuitive process and either go straight to rationality, or if they've been taught as a good blue pill beta, they will default to emotion, and then maybe they'll get to reason. So when you're thinking emotionally, when you've been brought up to get in touch with your feminine side, when you've been brought up as a defective girl, as I like to say, you have to push past that. Most guys, I think what you're doing, Dan, is you finally are realizing what's really going on here. And then you're realizing not just about the situation, but what your intuition was telling you, or your instinct was telling you prior to all of this happening. So I think guys one of the reasons I think guys need to get like feral. Guys need to go out and go camping or go lift more, or get something that's a little more like physical, and learn to fight, right? Learn to hunt, learn to do those kinds of those old school manly things, is because that gets you into conventionally masculine things, gets you in touch with your instincts more, and it shows you just how trustworthy, for the most part, your instincts really are. But you are taught to say, okay, well, that's just my instincts. That's not really what's going on. I really shouldn't be jealous. I really shouldn't be mate guarding. I really shouldn't be thinking these things, because your reason and your emotion have told you, or have been conditioned into you, so that you will believe that your instincts are false. By default, they're false, and they're not. And so guys will say, my gut's telling me not to do this. And so when I get guys that hit me up for counseling or whatever else, they'll describe their situation very similar to this guy, and they'll say, I always knew what was going on, but I couldn't put it to words. I couldn't like admit it to myself that this was really going on. And it's like, yeah, because your instinct is screaming at all of the things that are going on in its peripheral. And it's saying these things are not lining up with what you're being told. Here's another reason why you need to watch what people do and not what they say.
Here's what happens. Guys,
thanks, Dan.
Especially once you're sexually involved with a woman, and especially if the sex is fantastic, you will let that override all of your instincts. You will justify anything and everything. Behavior you wouldn't tolerate from any other person on the planet towards you, disrespecting you, because the payoff, at least in your mind, the payoff at the time is better than anything you've ever had. So
you're solving your reproductive problem.
Overlook those minor flaws. That's what guys tell themselves.
Oh yeah. Another thing, Dan, if you haven't read it yet, not this post, but the prior post, last week's my one prior to the one that's up right now, is about like vetting, or it's about like why can't guys have standards? And I start that essay out asking the questions like, why, first of all, why is it socially not approvable for a guy to have standards? But also, why do guys convince themselves that they shouldn't be able to have any standards? Right. And as a process of you thinking that, when you like, a lot of guys want permission, like when they call into like Rich Cooper's show, like Before the Train Wreck, most of these guys who are calling in are really just looking for permission from like him or Dr. Smith or whoever, right? And they know what the answer is. They know that their gut's telling them one thing, their instinct is telling them one thing. They just want somebody else to tell them that it's okay. And it's like, no, you already know what you know the decision that you have to make. It's just impossible for you to do it without somebody like kicking you in the ass. Well, that's why they're there, is to kick you in the ass. But understand that the bigger question is this: is how did you get to the point where you wouldn't give yourself permission to do that? How did you get to the point where you won't give yourself permission to have those standards? And that's what you need to unlearn. So that's actually I think more important. If you want to listen to your instinct and you want to understand what it's telling you, you have to give yourself permission to actually listen to it, because you've been conditioned from a long time not to listen to it. And Chris B, thank you, gave us another.
But with Dan though, Dan has to go into the Rational Male Hall of Fame, maybe even a wing for people that donate $100 or more at any given time. But Dan's the first. Yes. So let's get back to the ghosting. Okay. So because I want to resolve that. I've seen a couple of comments here. Somebody said that Pat Campbell must be the biggest white knight in the bar. This isn't about, to me, this isn't about white knighting. You correct me if I'm wrong here. Okay. To me, this is about having standards as to how you conduct yourself in your personal life, not just relationships, but day-to-day activities, coworkers, whatever. If you've been in a relationship, a long-term relationship with a girl, say, I don't know, 2-3 years, okay, and you decide it's Splitsville, you owe it as a guy, as an alpha, to tell her to her face what's going on. And not more importantly, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself. You got to be, this is not white knighting. This is it's having a code of conduct, ethical standards that most of the rest of the world right now doesn't have, because it makes them uncomfortable. Telling somebody you're not going to be with them anymore, breaking up with somebody, can be very uncomfortable. That's why a lot of people avoid it if they can.
Yeah, and that has to be there too. I think, and I don't understand why this would even be relatable as being a white knight or anything. I think most guys need to, particularly in this age, right? Like we're dealing with a generation right now that has been brought up behind the screen, right? Whether that's the cell phone or whatever, and that's how we relate. That's our digital consciousness right now. I really got to write an article about that. That's our digital consciousness, and I think that we hide behind that digital consciousness in preference to actually meeting someone face to face, in preference of actually like understanding what body language is. I was talking to John from Modern Life Dating, and he's been doing this body language mastery course, and I went on with just one show, and I was talking to him about body language and everything else, and I was watching some of the stuff he's doing, and like, to me, I'm Generation X, right? For me to see this, I'm like, who needs to learn? Like, to me, I'm like, this is stupid. Who doesn't know this kind of stuff? But they don't, because they don't have the experience. They don't have the opportunities as much as, like, say, you or I did when we were in high school or when we were coming up, and we have our social understanding of how we have social intelligence, and that takes an education that these guys don't have. And so they have to get it from somewhere else so they understand what's going on when they're talking to somebody, when they're approaching a girl, when they're even interrelating with other guys.
Right.
They don't know that because they don't have that same face-to-face contact. They can't read body language. I think one of the things that this is a mistake I think maybe I make is that I think guys tend to be more autistic, or they tend to be like, we use the term spurg, right, in the manosphere as sort of like to describe a certain personality. And it's like, why are there so many more of these guys now than there used to be back in like when I was in high school or even in the 90s or something like that? And it's because they don't have an opportunity for social educate to understand social intelligence and to actually understand what body language is, what verbal intonations are, what I always tell guys, if you want to learn to be a good pickup artist, or if you want to learn to just even be good at approaches or interrelating with women, you've got to be there in real time all the time. So there's that education aspect of it, but then the back of your head is saying, boy, it would really be easier to just type her and say, sorry, I'm out. Or just ghost her and then be out.
Here's this is my biggest frustration. Okay. So I'm a professional communicator, been a radio talk show host for 25 years, got an elaborate vocabulary. I choose my words very carefully. Okay. One of my biggest frustrations is texting people, because when you text somebody, they don't see your facial expression. They don't hear the tone of your voice. I cannot tell you how many times people have misinterpreted a text I sent that to me was as clear as could be. But yet time and time, and we've changed the way we communicate. That's part of the reason they don't have that opportunity to go up to the girl in high school and, talk to her, ask her out or anything like that, because that's not the way people communicate now. They communicate through screens.
Yeah, exactly. It's digital consciousness. Right. I think I've broken this down before. It's like we've always had two kind of forms of consciousness, and now we're sort of developing a third. Our first one is like being in real life, like I'm relating to you right now, and my first consciousness. My second one is the internal the conversation that I have with myself. It's like me thinking. Nobody can get into my second kind of consciousness because you can't get into my head, right? And then the third type of consciousness is our digital consciousness, and it's when we're on Twitter. It's when I'm writing a blog, right, or when I am relating to people online, just via text, and I'm sort of letting people in what my thought process is. And so it's this digital form of consciousness, and I really see that future generations are going to emphasize digital consciousness above all other forms very soon. We're already doing that. That's why we have something like ghosting, because we have to delete ourselves. It's easier to do that. It's easier. The other thing, I don't think a lot of guys realize this, is when we talk about game, when we talk like PUAs have been talking about game for forever, right? That like they made a game out of it. It's like sort of in the very early days, pickup was like almost like a hobby, or it was something that guys got into because it was fascinating to them, and they wanted to learn how to. At first, of course, it was just to solve their reproductive problems. It was just so that they could get laid. And then it became sort of like, how can I do this? What if it becomes this process of experimentation, and it was less about actually getting laid and more about the process and learning about it. And that's why we called it game. And one of the reasons why I think we call it game, or we say, did you score, or did you get lucky, or those kinds of things.
You should see scores.
Yeah, exactly. So why do we say that? Did you score last night? Why do we turn it into a game? Because it's easier to talk about it in those terms than it is to say, no, I got rejected by a real human being who looked me in the eyes and told me to go pound salt. Right? It's easier to do that because it hurts, right?
I mean, pound salt. I look for my favorites. Yeah.
And just like what you and I have, we've done a show on this as well, which is on rejection. Men face more rejection than women do. Sorry, ladies, it's true. Men face more rejection because we have a burden of performance. We have the burden to initiate, to have a dream, to decide where we're going to go, what we're going to do, how we're going to go about doing it. And this is how mammals interrelate, right? The men display and women choose. So men have to take more risks at life in a lot of different areas, not just interpersonal or intersexual dynamics, but like in everything else. So there's that aspect. And when you've got guys, when you have a generation of boys who've been brought up as defective girls, and they've been brought up in the participation trophy generation for as long, so they don't know how to deal with rejection.
Right.
You and I have talked about this on your show. Every time there's a school shooter, every time there's another Nicholas Cruz, we say, where's his father? Where's the father at? You know, now suddenly the father's useful, right? But the fact of the matter is, the reason why we say where's the father is because this kid should have learned how to deal with rejection. And in almost every single one of these cases where there is a high school shooting, there's a kid who was rejected. He's been hammered flat by girls or hammered flat by life. Or why do we think that a movie like The Joker is so noteworthy right now? Because we can relate. We could totally relate with that, because this generation has never had a father figure to tell them or show them, here's how you deal with rejection. You know what? Guess what? You got defeated. How are you going to come back from that defeat? It's not about participation trophies anymore. It's about how are you going to deal with rejection, and how are you going to be a better person as a result of that?
You just brought up some participation trophies. There's, and it's not just one generation, it's multiple generations now, where you have children that have been coddled. They've been given a false sense of reality. Everybody's a winner. No, everybody's not a winner.
Not a winner. Yeah.
I told a story one time. A buddy of mine, it was a weightlifting contest, and he always won the 275-pound class. He came in second in this contest. He goes up. They called him up for the trophy. He took the trophy from the guy that was presenting. He said, and he grabbed the mic. He goes, you know what this means? The guy looks at him, what? He says, you know what this means? He says, out of all the losers, he said, I came in first place, took the trophy, threw it in the garbage on the way out. Okay. I tell that story to my boys in particular. It's a story about poor sportsmanship, but it's also what we have taught our kids, that winning's the only thing, win at all costs kind of stuff. But this idea that, everybody's a winner, once they get out there in the real world, they don't know how to deal with rejection. The more rejection you deal with in your life, whether it's in relationships or, sales, whatever, it toughens your skin. It thickens your skin. Eventually, if you've been rejected enough, it can make you almost bulletproof. Nobody can hurt you with words.
Yeah, because, I've said this before, that confidence is derived from options or the ability to generate those options. Now, when I talk about confidence, I was hitting on confidence because it's such a hot word for the success porn guys. You got to learn confidence. Like, there's just some magical well of confidence that's like deep down inside you. You just got to bring it up. Tony Robbins, yeah, right. No, confidence is derived from options. It's knowing that if you don't get this job, you're going to get another job. Like, a really good example is, like, guys tend to not ask for a raise, or they tend not to they tend not to get another job. They don't ask for a raise until they get another job, right? Or that's the only way that they go about it. The monkey doesn't swing from one branch until it has the other branch in its hands, right?
What's your job? Ready, right?
And so, but why is it that guys are more confident in that situation to say ask for a raise if they already know that they've got another option? Because you have an option that makes you more confident. And so one reason why I say guys need to spin plates and be non-exclusive is because you're developing options, and you're also building that confidence because you have those options. So if one opportunity doesn't work out, you've got three others that are working out. And there's that confidence. You have the confidence of generating those options in the future.
Here's where people will listen to this and they'll go, Rolo's telling married men to cheat so that they'll be more confident.
No. I'll tell you. Well, I do. I get this a lot. And so what I say, because like guys will say, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, develop more girlfriends while I'm, cheat on my girlfriend? No, there's other ways to develop options in your life, right? Like, make your job, make your passions, make whatever it is that you, like, most guys, when they get into positions, like they get into a sexless marriage, it's usually because they have put all their eggs in one basket. All they've done is focus on one thing, and that's, I got to make this bitch happy. How do I make her happy? Because if she's happy, then she'll have sex with me, and I'll be able to solve my reproductive problem. Well, you're never going to do that, because the woman that you're with knows you're optionless without her, and that is an insult to her ego. So if she knows that you are not the guy that other men want to be and other women want to have sex with, and you're trying to figure out how to make her happy all the time, first of all, you put yourself into her frame, and you're also what I call supplicative, meaning that you're supplicating to her all the time and appeasing her. And when you become an appeaser, that's when women lose respect for you, but they also, it confirms for women their hypergamous doubt. Can I get with another?
Made a bad choice. They will grow to resent you. The more you do for them, the more they will resent you.
Oh yeah.
It's like the fluke of all time. It doesn't make sense, but that's the way it works.
Well, that's why when guys say, "Oh, you got to give her flowers and you got to give her compliments and you got to take her to the dance and you got to do all this other kind of stuff," it's like that's not what, like, an alpha guy doesn't do that. An alpha guy has other options. She is the one that should be coming to you. She is the one who should be seeking you out. She is the one who should be coming to you, not, if not for permission, then certainly because she has a genuine desire for it. There's a dynamic within relationships where the guy, where if a woman understands that the guy is the best option that she, like, if he's the guy that answers that question, the hypergamous doubt question all the time, she is coming to him. She is looking to him. She is coming to him for either answers, or she's coming to him because she has a genuine desire for that guy. Why is that? Well, because she's not his primary focus. I've always said this as well, is that women should only ever be a complement to a man's life. They should never be the focus of it. And in my most recent post, I kind of dig into that a little bit. I did an essay for women, as you know, and I tried to explain this in as simple a terms as I possibly could. But like, if you want to be in a complementary relationship with a woman, that woman should be on your team. She should see you. She should admire you. She should respect you. She should desire you. If you want a good marriage, if you want a recipe, it's desire, admiration, and respect, right? I think those will probably end up being in my pyramid of my hierarchy of needs for a long-term relationship when I finally get to that part of it.
Respect's very high on the list, because without respect, the relationship's not going to work. There has to be that's a deal breaker right there. There has to be not just a certain level of respect, but there has to be respect for you.
Yeah. So anyway, we're kind of getting off track here, but I was just going to say is that I think that there is a generational difference here when we talk about ghosting. There's people in my life that, like, I mean, as you know, my notch count is a little bit over 40, right? I don't have contact with any of those women from those days. And there's a few that have sought me out over the years, like so I wonder what he's doing, on social media and those things. And I believe you wanted to tell a story about something that's similar to this, but I just wanted to kind of preface what the story you're going to say is that it's not that ghosting hasn't been something in the past. I think it was probably easier to do. It was easier to just like have a one-night stand and never see that person again. And I think women had to sort of adjust to that in prior generations, because if they were just with one guy for one night, if it was what we call same night lay, and then they move on, either they're going to pine over that guy or what could have been, or they're going to move on and they're just going to be like, okay, whatever, he's gone and I need to move on. And I don't think women have that ability as much in this generation that they did in prior generations.
I'm looking for the Dear. Oh, here it is. Here's the Dear Abby column that I was talking about. This is in the headline was the one. I think this is the one. Crap, this is not it. There was one. I'll just try to tell the story.
Okay.
Where there's a lady. She's been in a relationship with a guy for 10 years. They lived together for 4. They've been married for 6. They got no kids. Okay. And she ran into an old flame the other day that broke up with her years ago. And there's no denying it. The spark is there. Okay. So she's doing what you're talking about. She's writing to Abby seeking permission. And the headline was the most misleading thing of all. Former boyfriend threatens marriage. No, the boyfriend isn't threatening this marriage, honey. You are. You're the one that's looking for an out. So she talks about the fact that they've been together for 10 years. She likes him. He's a nice guy, all that kind of stuff. They bought a house. And ever since they bought the house, there hasn't been a lot of sex. She goes, the stress of home ownership, and it's like, what are you talking about?
Responsibility.
You want stress? How about paying for 2 mortgages at the same time, like I have in the past, or we're having 5 kids to raise? That's stress. The idea that a single or a couple, just, with no kids, that the stress of owning a home is too much for them, unless they got themselves in way over their head. They bought $1 million house and they don't have the money even to furnish the place.
That's filibuster.
To me, it was just a bunch of crap. So she was she goes, there's no denying the flame's still there, kind of stuff. And but at the same time, she doesn't want to hurt her husband, her current husband, because he put 10 years into her. She wants to let him down easy. So she's reaching out to Abby. She's reaching out to Abby, going, how do I come out of this on top? Which I just thought was hilarious. You know, how do I come out of this a winner? But it's an example of what you talk about all the time, hypergamy. She's in a relationship. She's got a guy that, you know, has been good to her, taking care of her for 10 years, but she's always thinking, you know, what if? She said, I don't want to break his heart. She says, but I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what if. Now, here's the way that story ends in my world. Okay, so yeah, get back together with the guy. He'll dump you again a second time. That's a happy ending for me. But it's just the hindbrain, whatever you want to call it, this idea that they're always wondering, could I have done better? It's like they can't control themselves. They can't control themselves.
It's hypergamous doubt. And this is sort of getting into the second part of today's show is I wanted to talk about, and you threw this story at me, and the first thing I can think of is I get a lot of guys who will make this it's what I call them. It's a misconception about hypergamy is that if I'm not always the guy, if I'm not always the A guy, if I'm not always on top of my game, she's gonna run off with the next guy who comes in, who smiles at her, and that's the end of it. So why should I ever bother getting into a long-term relationship? Here we have an example, right, of a woman who's been in a 10-year relationship. They buy a house, they're starting to settle down, they're starting to, you know, at least build a life together, and suddenly she wants out. And now she's done because domesticity was too much for her, apparently. So
the stress of home ownership.
The stress of home ownership. Right. Well, and I've told guys this before. I said, when you get into, like, what was it? One of the, was it number 4? I think Iron Rule of Tomasi is never move in with a woman that you don't plan to marry within, 6 months.
Right.
Because the reason I wrote that was because I had so many guys telling me, well, Rollo, I it was so great when we were dating, and she just couldn't get enough of me. We were tearing each other's clothes off, and now I thought we should move in together because we save on rent, and she's right there, and it's like the sex comes with the utilities, and now it's her frame, and it's whenever she wants it, and it's whenever it's convenient for her, or whenever she's comfortable with it. And there's that familiarity, there's the comfort that goes along with it, and all of that is anti-seductive. So all of the motivators that would prompt a woman to like marathon sex and to want to prove herself sexually to you, to say, this is what you're going to get in a long-term relationship with me, because really that's what sex is. It's a reward, but it's also a preview. That this is how men think. It's a preview of the kind of sexual experience that you're going to get if you commit to me and we settle down and we have this great relationship. Well, that's what Tom Likas calls the loss leader, right? It's the bait and switch marriage. So that once that guy gets into there, then suddenly she's not into him anymore. But as being illustrated in this example right here, is it's not that it's mismatched libidos. It's not that she's not into sex. It's she's now not into sex with him. So what is it that changed? She says, I thought this guy was he'd be a great guy to settle down with, have a house with, maybe get married, have some children with. And now a guy from her past, whether he initiated it or she initiated it makes no difference. So what's happening is she's got Mr. Perfect, and then she's got Mr. Exciting. And she has an option, and she wants to know what if. And now, because she has that option, she says, well, I want to explore that option. I want to have sex with this other guy. I want to go with the guy who's exciting, because perfect is boring. Perfect is not something that triggers women's indignation need. And that's why I tell guys who, especially if you're in a long-term relationship or you're in a marriage with a woman, you need to be her drug dealer. You need to be the guy who is dealing her the endorphin rush that comes from indignation. You need to be the guy that she is because if it's not you, she's going to try to find it somewhere else. It's going to be daytime television, or it's going to be romance novels, or it's going to be something else. So you guys will say, well, that's too much trouble. I don't want, I want to live a nice, perfect, quiet life and everything. Well, guess what? This is what that nice life of domesticity gets you, because women are on social media all the time, and they have access to prior boyfriends that, do you remember if it said like how old she was in this?
No, it didn't. But Abby actually said, how about a little dose of sobriety here? She says, nobody's going to come out on top. It's just,
no one is.
It's very, by the way, what she's proposing here is very selfish, and it's very short-sighted. It's like, well, what about the dude? He thinks, and then we get into, I'm going to segue into that other thing I told you about, because we get into this deal where well, you got to find the right guy, or you got to find the right woman, kind of a deal. And it was Path to Manliness. It wasn't Rich. I thought it was Rich Cooper. I think Rich retweeted this. He talks about the big lie. Women love men unconditionally. And he says, what would happen if you, A, lost your job? Would she still be into you? What if you gained 40 pounds? What if you had ED? Or what you're talking about here, what if you no longer provided that spark, that magic?
Yeah. What if
you're still going to be there with you?
Yeah. And I understand, because a lot of guys, a lot of MGTOWs will say, well, why should I bother? Why should I even do this? Because well, here's the thing is, because I don't know what the woman looks like, and I don't know what the situation is. I would need more information about this. But one of the misconception is that hypergamy is a straitjacket, that it's always good. That's why I put in the title of this determinism, because a lot, particularly tradcons, don't like the idea that biology and evolutionary psychology predetermines women's behavior, predetermines anyone's behavior. Because if you can say that your evolutionary, biological evolved firmware is going to predispose you to certain things, or to thinking certain ways, or to being certain ways, that, first of all, it removes an element of free will, but it also removes the element of personal responsibility, which, as you know, tradcons and a conservative mindset is always about personal responsibility. When I make comparisons of how women are sentenced to different punishments for the same crime as a man, that is our sort of sense of justice. And we say, well, that doesn't, the crime does, the punishment doesn't fit the crime, depending on whether or not you have a penis or a vagina. What about personal responsibility? And that's why a lot of guys don't like the red pill, or they don't like the evolutionary psychology aspect of the red pill, because it enters into an element of determinism, of that it's you can't help it. You get, like, the devil made you do it, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And I've said this on at least 4 different shows. Hypergamy is not a straitjacket. It doesn't mean that women won't be under control, either on their own or by being conditioned to be under control. So prior to the sexual revolution, prior to us unfettering hypergamy, there were social stigmas for a woman to do something like this. Right, to say, hey, this guy's kind of boring. He's no fun for me anymore. He's Mr. Reliable, but I want to get with Mr. Exciting. You're probably not going to see those letters sent to Dear Abby prior to 1965, right? Because that's just not something that happens. Well, now, because we've unfettered hypergamy and all of the consequences, there's no incentive for her not to do that. That's why she's conflicted. So that, yes, a woman can control that. She can control. She can be under her own control, whether family taught her that, religion taught her that, society taught her that, culture taught her that, whatever. There are ways she because a woman wants something does not necessarily mean that a woman even has the capacity to follow up on it, to capitalize on whatever that opportunity is. So I don't know, for all I know, this chick could be like, 200 pounds, and this might be a moot point in the first place, right? Like, maybe the guy's never going to get with her or whatever, or she thinks she has an opportunity with this guy, or she thinks she's going to have a better life with this guy. The question still being asked, whether or not she can actually do that, is another story.
This idea of getting back with people too. I think I told you the story. A buddy of mine's a Catholic priest, and he was talking about how social media has impacted what he listens to in the confessional. And he says, especially when it comes to old flames, in days gone by, if you dated somebody in high school or college, you rarely, if ever, encountered them again, especially if you moved out of town. Now with social media, they're just a click away.
Oh, right there.
People out of curiosity, and maybe having a couple beers, a couple glasses of wine on a Saturday night, they start looking up old. Then the flame takes off. He said, what I tell him all the time is, he says, whatever the reason was that you broke up in the first place, he said, it's probably even more so now. And it never ends well. It's just because what's your line about rummaging through the trash?
Yeah. Never rummage through the trash after you're taking the can to the curb, right? Because what you thought was valuable is never what you thought it was. And your neighbors see you do it, and you get dirty, and you do. I also have another essay called Old Flame, New Game. If anybody wants to understand, I've been talking about this kind of stuff for almost a decade now, I guess, where I noticed this happening before. And this was, I wrote about it because it kind of dovetailed into the alpha widow phenomenon, I guess. Because what was happening is, because we have another here we have technology once again changing up human interpersonal relationships. Now I can go back and look at see how my old girlfriend's doing, or I can go back and look at see how, like, we don't need high school reunions anymore, because we can just go on Facebook and it's like one big high school reunion. We can all find out what everybody else is doing, and there's no point in getting together, unless you want to get drunk together. I don't know. But now, because of this, now being an alpha widow becomes more prominent. It's more emphasized right now. So whether it's a guy that initiates it or a girl, like the one that got away, it's easier to do that now. And the stigma is gone. There's an incentive to do it, and there's no consequence, or there's very low consequences for having done it.
The problem with the relationships too, everybody does this. You tend to, it's almost an embellished story of what really happened. You tend to dwell on the good stuff, And in fact, over time, it's sort of like matures, And it's a story that doesn't probably match what really happened. And you're only remembering the good parts, not the bad parts. And it's that memory that, you've hashed over and over and over again that you're going to, not necessarily even the person, what they look like right now, or what they're doing right now.
Yeah, you're idealizing them.
I want to date a memory. I want to go back to when I was, 16, 22, whatever. That's what I want to date.
Yeah, and a lot of guys are going to listen to this and they go, oh, it's so hopeless. Why would I bother? Why would I want to get in a marriage? Why would I want to get with a woman because she's going to be doing this or that? And I get it. But whether or not that woman can actually do that, or maybe you are actually her best option. Maybe you ought to be the best option. Maybe you're the guy that says, yes, I can't get any better than this guy. That's why I say, like, a lot of guys don't want to, they see relationships, and not even just marriages, just any kind of like monogamous relationship with a woman as being like too much effort for them, because they think that hypergamy is going to override this all the time. And it's not to say that women can't do it. They can. It's just that's the subroutine that's going on. Just like guys want to jerk off to porn, right? Because that's the subroutine that's going on in the back of your head, is like you're always on a sexuality that is always on. That's why 68% of Christian guys say that they're addicted to pornography or addicted to sex or whatever it is, because there's that nature. I think for guys, we tend not to understand why it is that women can't control the worst aspects of hypergamy, because we are taught that we need to be in control of our sexual natures from a very early age. We can't just be little walking hard-ons walking around all the time and just willy-nilly doing whatever. Yeah, so we teach our boys to keep that under control from a very early age. Whereas for women, for the last at least 3 or 4 generations, we say, you know what, let your freak flag fly, man. I mean, go and you can be anything. You can be an astronaut. Don't let anybody tell you can't do something. And
did you see that tweet I sent you from Psychology Today about porn?
Yeah, I did.
Let me read this, because
you can read. Right. I got another thing I want to read too, but yeah, go ahead and read that one right now.
Because this explains a lot.
And this is actually, this is why you should not take Psychology Today as anything other than like the McDonald's junk food of psychology. I know, but there's some truth to this, and it explains why we're seeing a lot of what we're seeing. Okay, sure.
An interesting effect happens as people watch pornography. They become more egalitarian. What are you talking about?
Egalitarian.
And egalitarian. I'm sorry. And supportive of women and men sharing roles and work. Less accepting of gender-based discrimination. They also become more accepting of sexual diversity and less stigmatizing towards homosexuality. They become less religious and may even experience more crises of faith. Enjoying porn leads people to change their beliefs about sex, gender, and in some cases, rejecting the dogmatically rigid sex gender values that were taught in church. Now, comment on that, because I want to get back to the church too, and why your fourth book is going to be critical when it comes to relationships. But talk on that first.
So, okay, again, I think one of the there's a lot to unpack with this one thing here, but I understand. I understand. Yeah, I know we could. I understand the point that's being made here,
right?
But also understand that this is a form of social engineering that says, well, you know what, you would be less religious if you followed your base instincts.
Right.
If you're watching more porn, you are, and I'm going to invoke the name of Jeffrey Miller here. Jeffrey Miller had a post, or an article in Quillette, and I talked about this last Wednesday in my last show called "The Problem with Poly," one of the things he suggests is that we need to in some way tamp down our natural instincts for jealousy, our natural, like as if they're bad, right? Like not denying the fact that jealousy might actually serve an evolutionary purpose. We need to find some way to evolve above all of our base instincts, but we need to do so by eroticizing that jealousy, eroticizing those bad feelings we would have of, like, say, cuckoldry or something, right? So if you're, you should go out and I just posted this on Twitter. There's been 2 articles about how a guy should let his wife, give her a hall pass for like December, like you can go cheat on me for the month of December kind of thing. This has happened 2 months in a row now. There was an identical article in 2018. There's a new article out right now in November of 2019. It's this idea that you need to eroticize the jealousy that you would naturally feel, or they say, well, it's possessiveness, but it's really just, it's mate guarding. It's a guy who wants to say, you know what, this is my woman, and I have to ensure my own paternity, and that's why you feel jealousy. That's why you feel it. Well, so what we're saying here is all of those things, all of those conditioned beliefs, whether it's religious or it's social or it's racial or it's egalitarian or what, all of those things that might prevent you from being like this fully, actualized human being, all you got to do is go watch porn and eroticize all of the hesitations or all of the reservations that you would have otherwise. So if you can find a way to get off on that stuff, then you can be a better human being, because what they're saying here is that you would be better off watching more porn. That's what the guy literally is saying. Watch more porn and you will be a better human being because of that.
You'll grow.
What did I say before is, can a woman repress those instincts? Can a woman be can she police her own self with respect to the worst aspects of her mating strategy? That's still an experiment that's been going on since the late 60s, right? Because once we had the sexual revolution, we unfettered hypergamy. We said, okay, ladies, you police yourself. We're not going to do it for you anymore. We're not going to hold you back anymore. The arrangement, the social contract that we're going to make with you ladies right now is that you're going to be in charge of your own birth control. And now we can have sex without the hesitation or without the worry of getting you pregnant. So guess what? In trade for that, we're going to say, you police the worst aspects of your mating strategy. You know best. If you have a uterus, men shouldn't have a say in that. That goes along with that as well. But we bring this out as sort of this unspoken social contract, and that presupposes that women would have the ability to police it in the first place, to actually have the desire to police the worst of it, but also to actually do it themselves, because the church used to do that, because family used to do that. Even in Muslim culture, like when we talk about like honor killings in Islam, what is that? Well, it's because the woman has brought dishonor on the family. I'm probably going to explore this a little bit more in Religion in the Red Pill, but there used to be a stigma that came from a woman being a single mother. All that stuff is gone right now. But now we're saying, according to psychology today, that it's okay for that. And in fact, it's better if you do that, because we'll have a more egalitarian society. We'll have a better society. You'll be a better person if because what does pornography do? It eroticizes all of those hesitations. So the more you're exposed to it, the more you get off on it, the more you go, yeah, maybe that's all right. Maybe that's okay. It doesn't matter. Maybe the Catholic Church was wrong to tell me that homosexuality was wrong. Maybe it's okay for drag queen story hour at the library. All I got to do is keep watching pornography, and then I will suddenly transform all of my hesitations and my hangups into something that is beneficial for me. And I know what people are going to say to this right now as far as social engineering goes, but this is what it is. It's a social engineering effort.
Let me get to so your fourth book. All right. And we talked about why couples like in that Dear Abby column would stay together. They've been together for 10 years. Mm-hmm. The sex died after they had the stress of home ownership. But what women got going in their favor, to their advantage, especially if you've got a religious guy, a tradcon, is bottom line is this: they can do whatever they damn well please, because you made a promise before God that you would love and honor her till death do you part. And your honor's on the line, your reputation's on the line.
Yep,
and if you stray, you're the bad guy. So that's how they get away doing whatever they want. You know, sex, maybe once a month if you want it.
Appeal to the old social contract. Yes, and I actually wrote about that in the first book, which is called the honor system. Men, particularly guys who build themselves up based on like old school masculinities. Right. They're what we call the LARPers, right? The live action role players. Those are the guys who want to go out and give the Braveheart speech, right? They're all honor and duty and trust between strength and honor, and clasp each other in the warrior's handshake. Yeah, and that kind of stuff. And so there's that aspect. And I'm not saying that that's not important. I'm just saying that is something that is between men. Well, guess what? Women from like as far back as the Middle Ages saw that and used honor and duty and that sense of we have to have sort of a mutual understanding as men. They use that to their advantage, and that's again what's happening here.
They manipulate you with your own code.
Yes. But so a real man, and we hear this all the day. A real man would do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't, then you have no honor. If you don't, then you're not performing your duty. Your commitment should be to commitment and not to yourself. I've asked this in at least a couple of shows: is what is a man's commitment? Is it a commitment to himself, or is it a commitment to the concept of commitment? Right? If you commit, you say you got to be a man of your word. That's in the Bible too, right? Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Right? Don't swear anything before God, because it's better if you just say, have your word. A man's word is his bond, right? That kind of thing. And so women buy into that, and they use that against a guy. Like if you were a real man, you would think the way that I'm thinking right now. And one of the reasons why, and I'm going to pick on Christianity here, but this is not just Christianity about this, is that if you don't support them, if you don't buy into the new social paradigm, the new social contract, then you are not living up to your masculine duties according to the old social contract. And that's what I call the masculine catch-22. So anything that serves the feminine imperative, that's part of men's, like say, masculine nature or their sense of honor or duty, anything that serves, but any part of that serves the feminine imperative is okay. And women will use that to manipulate you. But if it's something that doesn't, then you're a chauvinist, then you're a misogynist, then you should be shamed for that. And so it's really used against a guy to have that. And that's why I wrote the honor system, because honor is used against men by women, particularly in this era, because women they want the benefits of the new social contract, but they want you to obey the old social contract.
Here's the guilt trip they put on you. Most people can identify with this. You don't want to disappoint your parents, your mom and your dad. Your dad. With me, it was my dad in particular, right? Well, this isn't just dad. This is God. Patrick, you let God down. You're disappointed God. This is the guilt trip that they're going to put on you. It's how they control. And people do not really comprehend and understand how religion is used as a tool to control men. Control men. It's feminine dominated, even like the Catholic Church. It looks like a all male hierarchy. I got news for you. Women have been running this church for years.
And more so now than ever before.
Absolutely. And the guys that are in positions of leadership within the Catholic Church right now are highly compromised themselves, and they've got problems of their own.
I'm almost through with it. I'm currently reading Alpha God by Hector Garcia, and I've said this on at least 2 other shows prior to this. And I really think that this is a really good book for guys who are red pill to sort of wrap their heads around with respect to religion. I almost want to call it a primer for the book that I'm going to publish here in Q1 of 2020. But it goes into how particularly the Abrahamic religions are really masculine religions. Everything that the God of Abraham, for the Jews, Muslims, and Christians, the God of Abraham is an alpha primate. He has the concerns of an alpha male. So it's territory, it's chastity from women, right? He wants to ensure paternity. in several instances he makes, and this was really tough for me to get through, is in several instances in the Bible, God says, wipe out, it says to the tribes of Judah, it says, wipe out those people except for the virgin girls, keep them for yourselves, which is exactly what I write about in War Brides, is how one tribe goes in, kills off the men folk, and in the case of the Bible, it's kill off the old ladies who are already mothers in the first place, and then but save the virgins for yourself, because those are your spoils of war, so that you can create the next tribe and you can create something else. That's written into the religion. And so as I'm reading this and I'm going through this, I'm going, okay, what does a female specific religion look like? How is, like, in my next book, this is what I'm writing about, is towards the end of the book, it's what does an alpha female God look like? What does an alpha female religion look like? And we're seeing it develop right now, because I've made this case even before I was writing the book, is that feminism, the feminine imperative, is continuing to assimilate mainstream religions right now, so that they can, make the doctrine and then make the faith into something that serves women. Well, when they finally get that done, when that's finally been realized, what is that going to actually look like? Let me see. I got another thing.
Are you asking me for an answer on that?
No, I was just going to say that's what I talk about in the book itself. Okay. But it's like, how do they get to that point is by using men and using men against other men. And so when I look at, like, say somebody like Beth Moore, I look at the rise of these female, like women's ministry teachers. I'm picking on Christianity.
Lutheran pastor from Denver.
Who's that?
Tats.
Say that again.
I said, is Beth Moore that Lutheran pastor?
No. But that's another good example, though. Beth Moore is really more evangelical. The Lutheran pastor is the one that melted down all the purity rings and turned it into a sculpture of a vagina and gave it to Gloria Steinem.
Yes.
Okay, that's a really extreme example, but that's what I'm talking about. That's where it's going right now. But they're using the old social contracts, the old sense of masculine duty, that a real man, a man of God, does what this female pastor says. A man of God would do this. A man of God would marry those single mothers, because now they've had a religious conversion, and it's your duty as a man to forgive her. And that's one of the reasons why I think that Christianity in particular appeals to women, because it's based on forgiveness. So when a woman gets into her epiphany phase, and she's had kids with whoever, single mother, she gets in there and suddenly she wants to do things right. It also coincides with a religious sort of awakening, or a convenient religious epiphany. That's why I call it the epiphany phase. And as a result, so that's the woman's side. That's why the forgiveness aspect of Christianity is so appealing to women. But when they get in there, they don't want to submit to men. They still want to be in control of the situation. They still want to be in control of their lives. So that part's okay to have guys think that it's their duty to marry them, but it's not okay for them to say, well, women can't teach in the church. And so you'll see this corruption, I think, of traditional faiths, so that it is a more accommodating religion or accommodating faith for women in the future.
I think a lot of women are very conflicted in this day and age. We talked about the gut check. Intuitively, they want to take that submissive role. They want to be submissive to the man. But at the same time, they have been programmed by culture over the last 50 plus years to be anything but. You're going to be independent. You don't need a guy. But deep down, they're trying to override thousands, if not millions of years of, evolution. I mean, it's just, it's the way the whole system set up. I think I told you when we were at when we went to the patriarchs, somebody asked the question, what religion would you join to model like the perfect family? And a lot of people were pissed off at me because I didn't say Catholicism. I actually said the Church of Latter-day Saints. And I mentioned that I had made a trip to a function where there were a lot of families there. And there was something beautiful about all of the families, okay? And that is, what I saw before me was natural order. You know who the dad was. The dad's dead. The dad's in charge, right? You know who mom was and the kids. And everybody seemed generally pretty happy. What I noticed was they weren't playing around with a lot of gadgets like most of our kids are nowadays. And there was something there there was a beauty because it was like I said, the natural order, the way things are designed to be. But modern day society is completely overridden it.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with you in that respect. I think that I wrote about this in the second book about hierarchies of love and how it used to be. It would go from, like, say, God to man to woman and then to children, right? And that was the order, that was the hierarchy, right? So there was what we've done now, I think, in mainstream religions is we've reversed we put men at the bottom of that heap. So you've got God, you've got women, you've got children. Because of the cult of the child, we need to do what's in the best interest of the children. And then the man is ridiculed and is turned into another child himself. That's what women complain. He's just like having another kid in the house. I can't believe him, and he's a ridiculous buffoon who needs a woman to instruct him and save him from himself. That's the message that we're being told. That's the egalitarian way. We want to call it like egalitarian, like, oh, we're all even Stevens. That's not what it is at all. If you're in an egalitarian relationship, the woman will always control the frame because she is the selector and you are the performer, and that's the natural order. Well, when you look at something like the LDS and you look at how the man is the head of the household, conventionally, masculine man, head of the household, you've got the woman who is the woman who is looking up and admiring that man, and whether that's natural, whether that's a genuine desire, or it's something where she's grown up in the church or grown up in that culture, whatever, and says you focus on your husband and has been trained and conditioned in those ways, whatever, that's still the way that things are getting set up, and the kids are subordinate to the mother and to the father. And if you look at this, one of the reasons why you're saying it seems like the natural order, because it is the natural order. That's exactly how that's how we evolved as human beings. Is the man was the protector, he was the provider and the protector, and he was the guy who was he was the performer, right? But he had to protect the woman who was the life giver, who was the one who eggs are expensive, sperm is cheap. She's looking for quality, he's interested in quantity. Under the natural order, maybe he got with one woman and then had other women on the side to spread the seed. When it comes to parental investment in a monogamous and naturally monogamous order, the man is at the top of that list and the top of that hierarchy. That's one of the things I really disagree with Jordan Peterson about, is like, he talks a lot about dominance hierarchies, and I 100% agree with him on pretty much all of that. But as soon as you get into a marriage, and he says this in his own marriage, as soon as you get into an interpersonal relationship, then suddenly it needs to be egalitarian. Then suddenly we got to play even. I got to listen to her, and you got to sit down at the table and negotiate how things are going to work. It's like, no, that's why you're screwed, man, because you're not following those dominance hierarchies within your own relationships.
You talk about women nowadays. You mentioned that the idea of having an alpha male, hot sex, whatever, just that leadership, and also a good provider. That you can't get the two together. You said it's as rare as a unicorn. I'll go back to Mormon women. All right. They stick out like a unicorn in this day and age, because you imagine finding a woman who wants to take care of you, wants to clean the house, wants to cook for you, wants to, do all of those, I guess, traditional, feminine roles or things that women do, but she wants to do it to serve you. Yeah. And that's when you find somebody like that, especially in this day and age, it's like, wow, what planet did you come from?
Yeah, man, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly what I talk about in my recent post. Is if let's use this story you just told me about, the Dear Abby thing right there. The woman gets into a relationship with this guy for 10 years. He's at least been a guy that has presented himself as somebody who she can go buy a house with, right, and that she wants to live with. But yet she's still looking for a guy outside the relationship. She still wants to say, is it this guy? I don't think this guy is the best I can do, but I'm going to look outside of that relationship. And so there's still that aspect. There's going to be that hindbrain routine running, but the guy still has something. He still has something there that she wants or that she needs, but he's not the complete package. And that's why I say what we're seeing right now, particularly in the church, is this attempt to turn the faith around, or to what the social the social aspects of church, like the social conditioning aspects of church, have to be utilized by the feminine imperative to raise a group of guys to fall in line with that, to fall in line with to be the beta in waiting, to be the guy who's going to be serviceable and a utility for them, while they can go off and do, because they're sinless and they're blameless, and they're if they're going to be the mediator between God and man, as it is anyways, they can. There's no incentive for them not to go out and do that. And so you've got at least from what I'm thinking here, is you've got a generation of guys who have learned to be supplicative. They've learned to be supplicants to women, to believe that women are, first of all, the crowning glory of God, right? Is a woman, and that is a real man is the one who agrees with that, who falls in line with that. So you've got this generation of guys who are already beta, who are already in a scarcity mentality as it is, who already associate their intersexual, their mating strategies with a religious doctrine. Like, this is the way we're supposed to do it. I won't be considered a real man unless I do these things. And I look at these women as if they're the crowning glory of God. I'm not going to solve my reproductive problem. So you've got this institution that's not just the faith; it's also the social aspects of that faith and what is it teaching. I think that in maybe in the LDS, I would also make a case for at least some aspects of Islam right now. There is that hierarchy that is still being passed on from generation to generation from within that religion, but I think you're going to see that erode. I know that LDS is very proud of that, but I also know that there are women within the LDS who want to get into leadership positions within that church. Whether that'll happen, I don't know. But what happens when they get into that is they assimilate that church to serve the female purpose. That's why you get that Lutheran pastor who's got tattoos up her arm and wants to turn it into sort of this lesbian house of God. And then you've got like the Presbyterian girl, you got the Presbyterian pastoress who wants to, or she says once women get into positions of leadership within the church, they turn it into a Unitarian style thing. Everybody's welcome. Participation trophy. It's more social. I would say it's more collectivist. Everybody's welcome.
The lady out in Denver, the Lutheran with all the tats and the piercings and stuff. That's when they go out and they interview her parishioners, they love it because the message is so uplifting. They don't feel judged there. And there's diversity and all these wonderful things, and they're going in there, but that's not exactly what the church was.
Well, I see. Yeah, exactly. And I use this in the book as well. Is there was this example of I think it was the Beyonce worship service that happened at this church in San Francisco.
Right.
And I think they did this because it was, and Beyonce is all about feminism and everything. And they opened their doors and they said, you know what, even if you're not Catholic, anybody just come on in and we're going to have a rockin' worship service here. And they invited her, and it was like this multicultural, let's bring everybody together. And it doesn't matter what your faith is. It's like interfaith kind of thing. And I think that when women get into those positions of authority, that's the direction that they take it. So when you look at this Presbyterian, I forget her name, but I think it was Jessica something or other, but what they end up doing is they turn that established religion, the dogma and the doctrine of that, into a Unitarian faith, which is Jesus is not the only way to heaven. God is not male. He's just, just is, or it's this force. What happens is the actual foundations of the faith gets rewritten so that everybody can come in. And when you have a church, or when you have a faith that is essentially a franchise right now, or essentially a commercial entity, that makes sense because you want to appeal to the broadest audience. You want the most amount of people coming in to support the church because it's a tax-free organization, and pretty much it's a business that's competing with other churches. And if other churches are in some way exclusive, or their articles of faith are exclusionary, where are most people going to go?
Right.
And right now, I don't know if you've read this, but like I think there's like a 26% drop right now in people who acknowledge or identify as being Christian or being religious at all right now. And we're fast approaching a time where we're gonna that interfaith kind of thing, that spiritual but not religious thing, is going to become even more and more attractive, and it will be women in positions of church leadership who will take those churches, those established faiths, and turn them into something that's more interfaith. And I think you're all go ahead.
I live here in Tulsa, okay, Oklahoma. It's the buckle of the Bible Belt, all right? It's ground zero. Oral Roberts University is here. We've got at least 10 what you would call or classify as mega churches. And I've talked with pastors privately, off the record, okay, about what there's certain things they're not going to talk about in church, okay, because it's going to make people feel uncomfortable. And it is a business. It's about growing the flock. If you've got the biggest church, you're the best, right? May not be the actual gospel message you're supposed to deliver. But, in recent years, they won't talk about something like divorce. And you can't when you've got pastors who have been divorced themselves and remarried sometimes more than once, right? Yeah. They're not going to talk about homosexuality because somebody out there is going to have somebody in their family that is, either homosexual, lesbian. So that's off the limits. You wind up talking. It's a very small amount of stuff you can actually talk about now because you don't want to offend anybody. What you get is a watered down version or something like Joel Osteen's prosperity gospel.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny you should bring that up because I see a lot of the big mega churches sort of doing the same thing. Even if there's a male pastor that's at the head of the church, they're still like, I would compare Joel Osteen to Tony Robbins now because it's not so much prosperity.
I never saw him on TV. I did not know that he was a Christian pastor. All I saw up on the stage was a spinning globe. I don't recognize that as a symbol for Christianity. And I really thought it was like Tony Robbins Jr., the next generation.
Yeah, because that success porn has found its way, into a religious mindset or a religious context right now. And so that is what's hot. That's what brings people. That's what gets asses in the seats right now.
Jesus wants you to be rich, Rollo.
And people are going to run me up the flagpole for this, but I also see the same thing going on with Kanye West right now, and his Jesus is King and doing all that kind of stuff. Here's the thing. Me even having a question about that makes me look like the asshole. Right. Like, oh, well, of course, there's a lot
of, I talked about this with Dr. Piper on Friday. There's a lot of Christians questioning the authenticity. The best one with Kanye, though, is when he told Kim Kardashian a week or two ago, he said, the way you dress hurts my soul. What a great line that is. But it's like, dude, you knew what you married. You married the Kardashian family. What are they famous for? Sex tapes.
Yeah, more or less.
That's the bottom line. That's what they're famous for. It's not like they invented a cure for cancer.
Yeah, he knew what he was getting into, and I think he probably expected her to like fall in line along with that as well. Well, it's like I've also questioned the authenticity, the ingenuousness of say like Roosh and his religious conversion. Same thing with Kanye West. The reason why I have to be skeptical is because I see. Because of the research I've been doing for this book, but also because I see what happens is we're leaning more towards this one world faith, and that's coming through putting women into positions. Well, first of all, it comes from two things: putting women into positions of leadership within established church franchises, and then second of all, the fact that they're franchises, the fact that they are business entities and they're competing against other tax-free business entities as well. So every other church is competing for the same tithing dollar that anyone else is. So what do we got to do that? Well, we got to be more hip. We got to be more cool. We got to make homosexuality Christian kosher. We have to make it. We want everybody to come in here. It's not the sinner. It's the sin, right? We condemn the sin, but we still love the sinner, and we want them to come in. That sounds real good up until the point where you get women melting down purity rings to turn them into vagina statues. I think what you're going to see, and this is the process that I outlined in book 4, is that what happens is you have a faith that is pre-established, and the church culture becomes sort of corrupted by secular culture. Christianity is a good example of this, because what Christians do is they'll go and they'll take something from the world, right? They'll take something from the secular world, and they'll go, that's really cool. If we could find but that's of the devil. But if we could find some way to make that Christian and bring it into the church and say, this is cool, we're going to be okay with that. We're going to slap the Jesus fish logo on it and we're going to allow it into our church, but it's like Christian rock, right? It's like, we're going to bring, and that's all you hear right now in most worship in evangelical, white waspy churches right now is that kind of stuff. But there was a time when all of that was like, you would never have anything like that in the church. It was all hymns and stuff, but now it's got to be hip. It's got to be relevant. And so when we bring in parts of the world and we put them into a religious context, that goes in through the culture, and the culture is where women bring this stuff in, because in church culture, women are like, they dominate everything, right? It's women's group. It's this, it's like the ladies auxiliary. It's everything that has to, so they're not actually teaching, they're not up on the pulpit because that's against the Bible, but they are definitely 100% in control of church culture. So what happens is that element comes in through church culture, and then eventually that becomes something that the church has to do to get people to get asses in the seats. So you got Joel Osteen giving this prosperity thing, or doing this power of positive thinking thing, because that's what's hot in the world. Well, if we can just find some way to bring that in, then we can get that audience too and bring them in, and they can watch TV and they'll watch our commercials and whatever else. And so they bring that in through the culture. And then what happens is the doctrine changes according to the culture. So now we're the church that accepts these things. And then what happens is 2 generations later, then the faith changes. So we have to find some way to rewrite the Bible or rewrite the actual genuine faith to accommodate the doctrine that accommodated the changes in church culture. So it goes through like 3 phases. And right now, I think we're getting to the point where we're going to start rewriting the Bible, start rewriting holy scripts to coincide with what we're talking about. So when women get into those positions of power, when they get into church leadership, they change it according to what gets more people in. What is that? More inclusivity, more collectivism, more Unitarianism, more, you don't have to actually believe in Jesus to get to heaven. You can still be a Muslim and come to our church. You can still be a Jew and come to our church. You can still be a Satanist and come into our church, because we accept all people, and it will end up becoming this sort of this one world group collectivism that is based. And I asked this question in the beginning, is what does a female God look like? She looks like an evolved primate, an evolved female primate, a collectivist mindset. That's exactly where it goes.
The new Trinity is diversity, tolerance, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
That is it. That's the new Trinity. I talk about that all the time.
Love.
Especially here in Tulsa. It's one of the things that's heavily promoted around here. That's the new Trinity. That's what we worship.
Mm-hmm. And it will, and I know people are saying, well, this is kind of far-fetched, but I guarantee you within the next decade, you will see more of this assimilation, and women will call it love. It is the doctrine of love and inclusivity, because God's love, right? And so if you go against this, then you go against love. And we're already seeing this.
We've redefined love, though, too. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. And and then I liked what Dr. Piper had to say about your truth versus my truth. Like, is truth objective or is it subjective? And in a female dominated religion, truth will always be subjective. It's the book of Oprah, right? Your truth is different from my truth, right? No. It's either objective or not. Go ahead.
I got to bail. I'm going to ghost. Until next week.
Ghost me. All right. I'm going to take care of the super chats. And Pat, thanks for joining me once again. I'm going to do super chats and we're going to end this. And
I'll talk to you later, buddy. Have a good show. All right. Yep.
All right. Pat is now gone. So I'm going to go and let's see here. What do I got? I got Sammy. Sam, thanks for watching all of these for me. The super chats are really good today. So I'm going to see if I can go through this. I already answered Dan Avita. By the way, Dan, thanks for that $100, but also, hit me up in email and I'll talk with you in more depth if you'd like. Chris, thanks for that $20. YOLO. Thank you. Hi, should a red pill man never buy flowers or presents for a girl? If so, what is appropriate to do? So, okay. So I will answer that really quickly here. The way I look at gifts, the way I look at flowers, the way I look at compliments, also throw compliments into that. I look at those as sort of rewards for desired behavior. Like, what most guys will laugh about is they'll say, well, you're giving, like, if a guy goes into the florist and he asks for a dozen roses, what's the first thing you think? Well, it's either his anniversary or he fucked up. the guy did something wrong, right? And so he's trying to make up for it. So now the narrative of buying a flower for a woman is really sort of an appeasement. It's like our default understanding. When a guy gives a gift, when a guy gives a compliment, it's an appeasement to that woman. And I think, I'm not saying that I give my wife gifts, right? But I do so. First of all, you do so sparingly. Also follow the 2/3 rule, right? She's got to be as into you, like, what was it? For every 3 kisses she gives you, you give her 2, right? I'm not saying you do that as like you write this down in your journal. I'm just saying that there's the 2/3. Like if she gives you 3 gifts, you give her 2 gifts, that kind of stuff. Well, before you decide that you're going to go give a woman a gift, understand the dynamic between you and understand the message that is being conveyed by giving that gift, giving that compliment, giving those flowers, whatever. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying understand that there's a message attached to that. And women, of course, understand communication. So if a guy is constantly giving her flowers, oh, I love you, okay, there's that. There's also the aspect that maybe you're trying to buy her affections, or there's the aspect of maybe you're trying to make up for something that you did. Those are things that run through people's heads, right? So what I say is this: if you're going to give a woman a compliment, first of all, consider turning it into a neg, right? Consider making it something that like a double entendre, right? Like something that she could take 2 different ways. And there's an art to that. That's why I call it pickup artistry, right? Because there's actually an art to it. So do so sparingly, very sparingly, because it can't be your nature to give her lots of gifts. It has to be something like if you're the kind of guy who gives gifts easily, was it 48 laws of power? I forget which one it was. I think it might be 14. Is scarcity makes the price go up, right? You increase power through scarcity. The same thing applies to gift giving. Or like for a guy, when I talk about vulnerability, really, I mean, technically, really, a gift is kind of a, I'm going to put this up here, is kind of it's kind of being vulnerable because it could be interpreted in different ways. So be careful about it. What I always say is this: don't give gifts unless something has happened, unless she has performed in some way. Like, think of them as positive. Gifts are positive reinforcement. Use them as, like, if you had like really great marathon sex on that weekend, okay, send her a flower. She did something good, right? You want to reinforce that with something, but it can't be your nature. Like, predominantly, when I talk about vulnerability, I say guys need to be alpha. They need to be, protect yourself. Don't be vulnerable. Make that who you are, so that when that rare occasion comes up where you are vulnerable, the woman that you're with goes, oh my God, I'm the only guy that can draw it out of him. And she fills in the blanks for herself because of that, because you are predominantly not the guy who's vulnerable when you are finally, just for a moment, right? I mean, there's strategic vulnerability. When you are vulnerable in that moment, that's when she appreciates it. Because if you're always vulnerable, or if you're always giving gifts, or if you're always the guy who's like trying to earn her affection through acts, then it loses its value. And if it's too easily had, then it's worthless to a woman. A woman wants to be able to earn your affection. She wants to be able to earn your desire. If you are the prince, if you are truly the prince, if you're the guy who is on top of his game, you're the alpha, again, abstract term, if you're the alpha male guy, then you're the guy whose attention is worth something to her. If you're constantly giving it to her, if it's too easily had, it goes down in value. So those are things to think of when it comes to gifts, flowers, compliments, attention, affection. I'm not saying you should be this, like, just, don't think in binaries. I'm just saying that it can't be your predominant personality traits to be the guy that constantly defaults to doing that. So should you buy? Yeah. Okay. For desired behavior, think of that. If you want a general rule of thumb, think of it in those terms. For desired behavior, that's where you go with it. I'm going to post this up here because I know Sam would want me to. Let's see. What else do I got here? Ola from Norway. The only Ola I know is a really badass guitar player. And if you are on YouTube and you look up Ola, you will know who I'm talking about. Rolo, do you consider mode one game? Well, mode one game. I know Krauser did not. I like mode one. I think it is a form of game. I think it's one of many forms of game. Now, Alan Roger Curry will probably disagree with me. He thinks it is the only form of game. The only way that to deal with women is to be as direct as possible. And I love Alan to death. I still do. I think what he talks about is probably the most pragmatic form of game, to just say, hey, look, I'm into you. Are you into me? If not, I'm done. If you are, let's go get drinks, right? Whatever. Like if you're more upfront, you're more direct. I think probably even in today's dating, today's sexual marketplace, it might behoove you to be more direct, because so many guys are just kind of, they don't even want to approach as it is. So for a guy to approach in the first place is just a breath of fresh air to most women, because they're not like, getting it on Tinder. Like if you look at Tinder, the most successful guys on Tinder, of course, are all good looking. But if you are bold and you are just like, and I hate to use this as an example, but if you use the Anthony Johnson opener, which is like, hey, I want to come on your tits and make you my girlfriend. If you use those kinds of things, that's a pretty in your face way to just sort of establish, first of all, establishing dominance, but you're also establishing the fact that you're the guy that's going to go and make those approaches. I think that when it comes to mode one, there's a pragmatism to it, but there's also a danger to it. So if you are not the guy, if you're not the alpha, if you're a beta guy, or you're a guy who will be creepy for doing those things, then yeah, you've got something to watch out for. And MGTOWs would probably have a case. I don't think MGTOWs would really like mode one, because it puts men in a precarious position. Because if the girl's not into you, then she can view that approach as sexual harassment, because it's so direct, because it's so in her face. There are some women who would appreciate that. There are other women who will call it sexual harassment. So I think it's a form of game. I'm not saying it's the only form, but I'm saying it is a form of game. What did I get here? Charles Alexander, what did you give me here? I'll get to you in a minute, Charles. I got some other ones here first. Let's see. Duncan McLeod says, different countries and places have different sexual dynamics. Yes, I do. Speaking in generalities is not always. Yeah, okay, I get that. I actually have a post called Generalizations. This is a very old. I don't want to say it's a debate, but it's a very old contradiction. Like people say, well, you use sweeping generalities. Well, the thing is, we have to. That's what science uses. It doesn't focus on just those little specifics. If you look at, what is it, the not all women are like that bell curve. Not all women are like that, but most are, right? Not all people are like this. Not all people do this. I can point out anecdotal things going on in other countries, or maybe in a different culture or a different society, that might not always be true, right? And that's why I keep saying, like, hypergamy is not a straitjacket. It's generally the way it's the way that women evolved. It's what women are actually looking for. Now, can all of them optimize that to their ultimate, best interest? No, they can't. And for a lot of different reasons. So when I say, like, the general truth is women are hypergamous, how that hypergamy manifests, we can start talking about different things. We can start talking about context. We can talk about culture. Like I was talking with Pat before, we can talk about how prior to the sexual revolution, there were stigmas involved. Now we can't repress women because anything that in any way would say, women, you should follow this, or you should have some rules, or you should police yourself. We can't say those things, even in the most beneficial, marginal senses anymore, because we don't want to be that guy. We don't want to be the chauvinist. We don't want to be the misogynist guy anymore. But women need to hear that. Women need boundaries. Women need rules. But when we say something like that, we can't, because of whatever, like, cultural context we're talking about, or whatever personal context. Like, not all women are like that. Okay, yeah, but most women are. All women are hypergamous. Okay, how they manifest that is another. I'm hoping that that's what you were getting at, and that maybe that's not. Generalizations. The only way to make predictive, connect dots to make predictive, understandings of things, is to work in generalities. So I think generalization and generalities get a bad rap. So if we're just gonna like women use whataboutism all the time. It's like, well, what about this one? I know a woman who could do a backflip, and that goes against everything you've just said. Well, if we're going to talk about, I want to know what's generally true. I don't want to know specifically true. I want to know what's generally true, so I can make predictions and I can sort of understand dynamics better from generalizations than I can from individual ones. And that's also I should also say that is the fallacy of individuation, which is that an individual, was it the exception proves the rule, right? So there's still a rule, there might be an exception, but the only reason you know the rule is there is because of that exception. So take that as you will. Red Steel says, women, thanks for the 50 Norwegian, whatever those are. I got to learn what that actually is. Women want poly to be mainstream to appease the feral side and also block their betas from denying the woman access to resources. Yes, they want their cake and eat it too. That's why poly is very attractive to women right now. That's why we're even having this conversation, because most, like prior to this, like I've made the case, and actually this is a Pook saying, is that women would rather share an alpha than to be saddled with a beta. Now they don't. Well, so if that's the general truth, when they no longer need betas, what's left? Well, there's the alpha, right? That's the guy that they want to get with, that they're going to share. They no longer need betas anymore, but they would still love to share the alpha. That's why poly is popular, because even in spite of all that, they still want the comfort. They still want the phone friend. They still want the emotional tampon to be there to as their comfort, as the stuffed animal at the end of the bed. But they still want the options to go out and get with the guy who they really want to breed with. All poly, like the appeal of poly for women anyways, only proves hypergamy. I don't see how it proves anything else. Is it opens up options for women, and it satisfies alpha seed and beta need. That's why poly is popular. And if you want more information on that, go and check out my my show that I did last Wednesday. It's the most recent one to this one. And I talk about the problem with poly, and I get into exactly what you're talking about. Red Steel. I should start a shaving company and call it Red Steel. Let's see. EC Smooth says Fresno State Bulldogs. All right. Dog Dad says TRM's changed my life. Thank you. I posted that up later on. Disco God. Now here's the one I wanted to get to. I love the talks. Always lots to learn. Rolo, just checking to see if you got my email about being a victim of the purple pill. Yes, I did actually. So please be patient. This last week has been very hectic for me because Halloween is always really tough in my line of work. I'm probably going to sit down tomorrow morning, Monday morning, and I'm going to go through all of the emails that I have just collected in my inbox and see if I can get to everybody before noon. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that if you've hit me up for like counseling or anything, I did get your email. I just haven't been able to get back to you for like the last week and a half. So yeah, it's coming. I will start scheduling and start talking to guys and giving you, if you want phone calls or you want or not Skype calls or whatever, I'll be happy to talk to you about that. I also am trying to set up something with Abu American right now so we can do Religion in the Red Pill, and I want to get a Muslim perspective for Religion in the Red Pill. That's coming up as well. So there's a few things. But yes, I did get that. He says avoid the purple pill. Yeah. Duncan McLeod, again, dude, Colombian women are like that. You think the whole world is America. Ha, ha, ha. No, what I think is I think that women are women wherever you go. Now, if you want to talk about like Brazilian women, you want to talk about Latin women, yes, there's going to be cultural differences. How they manifest hypergamy is different. How they go, like when I talk about like conservative values, like ideological values, or I talk about the sisterhood, right? When I say the sisterhood uber alles, I say the sisterhood overrides politics, it overrides religion, it overrides cultural, it overrides everything. Same thing is true, like that women are women wherever they go. Women have women are hypergamous, right? Women have evolved for certain proclivities, right? How that is manifested can change according to culture. So like when I get like Islamic guys will say, well, you know, the women in our culture know better, right? Okay, well, yeah, they can't manifest it in the same way as a liberated woman in the United States, but the impetus is still there. They're still looking for the best husband that they can get, or they're still looking for their concept of love is still based on hypergamous opportunism. How they're able to manifest that is a completely different story. Weekly narrative, $15. Thanks, man. Emperor protects. Okay, here's this is the one. I'm just going to post this up here. Charles Alexander, $20 says, why is it that we see lesbian women in relationships with lesbians that present themselves very masculine? Good question. Finally, a good question. If they are really lesbians, wouldn't they be attracted to feminine women? Well, let me explain a couple things to you. I wrote in the very earliest days, I wrote an article based on this show that Oprah did one time, and it was about sexual fluidity. And so this is back like in 2011. So this is almost a decade ago. And so the idea of sexual fluidity has been around for a long time. And that's really kind of what you're getting into. And there's been a resurgence of this lately because of the future is female thing, and because of the feminine gestalt of, at least in Western cultures, has risen to the like when I talk about has risen to the forefront, right? When I talk about the gender war, this is what I'm talking about. So why is that? Why are we suddenly taking another interest in sexual fluidity? Why is it that women who get to be like 40 some odd years old suddenly decide that they want to be lesbians? Like they suddenly think, well, or they want to divorce their beta husbands and they get into a relationship with a butch female. Well, because that female is actually more masculine than the guy they used to be married to. It's not that they're actually lesbians, if there's even is such a thing. I tend to see homosexuality from a behavioral standpoint. Okay, I've yet to see anyone give me any concrete proof that there is a gay gene. Okay, I'm not saying that it's wrong or it's right. I'm just saying that there's no conclusive proof that there is a genetic element to homosexuality. And so if that's the case, then I have to believe that it is a behavioral thing. And I have seen this side of the argument proven better than I have the genetic side. So when people say, well, I was born that way. Well, how do you explain then a woman who's 40 years old, who's had children, who was in a marriage for a long time, and suddenly she decides that she wants to be sexually fluid? That's a different thing, right? We want to say that now, well, she suddenly discovered that she's a lesbian after 40 some odd years. Well, is that a biological thing or is that a behavioral thing? Is it because she can't find a guy, like a good a hardcore masculine guy, or is it that the next best thing is a butch lesbian? And if you read that article, and if you go and you watch the show that that it is based on, there is still a heterosexual dynamic in lesbian relationships. There's still a butch and there's still a feminine participant in those relationships. So when there's a top and a bottom, even in male homosexual relationships, there's a submissive and there's a dominant partner in there, and those two tend to imitate conventional masculinity and conventional femininity. So when a woman decides, well, I can't find no good guys, I can't get a good masculine man to commit to me, then I'm going to go and find the next best thing, which is I'm going to be a lesbian and I'm going to get with the next best guy. And a lot of these women who are interviewed in this show that I was writing about were saying exactly the same thing. Is they said the attraction that they had for their dominant partner was similar to the attraction or similar to the love or the interest that they had in their fathers. They were looking for that dominant masculinity and they can't find it in men. So they look for it in a woman. And so understand that even in homosexual relationships, and this is why I say it's behavioral, is still built on evolved conventional gender paradigms. That's why another reason why I think it's all bullshit when people want to tell me that, oh, gender is just a social construct. No, there is definitely some biological elements to that. And we can see those elements even before the child is born. The gender differences actually biologically start in your brain when you are forming in your mother's womb. they don't like that because we want to all be egalitarian bonobos, right? We're all supposed to live in blank slate equalism, and that's just bullshit. But that's a good question, though. I actually wanted to answer that because I've talked about sexual fluidity before, but even in conditions of sexual fluidity, like look at what homosexuals wanted with respect to same-sex marriage. They wanted the right to be considered married. There is no more conventional, traditional institution over the course of human history from time long ago to now than marriage. Now, of course, marriage has been completely corrupted and distorted into something different, but you would struggle to find an institution that epitomized like traditional conservative thought, right? And that's what homosexuals want. We want to be included too. We want to have our own marriages. We want to be considered married. Why? You're rejecting pretty much anything that has to do with the mainstream society by being homosexuals in the first place, but you still want that. And now, of course, the state says, okay, well, it's fine. They don't care. The state doesn't give a rat's ass whether you're, they don't even care if you're married to an animal at this point, right? Because it's all about the contract and it's all about who's getting paid when you get divorced. But so why is that? And I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm not saying it's bad or it's good. I'm trying to look at this from an objective perspective. But what it looks to me like is that even in a condition of a homosexual relationship, there is still heterosexual dynamics that are part of our evolved firmware, our understanding of conventional biological gender that manifests even within homosexual relationships. So that is the long-winded way of saying that. Oh, Duncan, thank you once again. $10 says, New York City dating culture sucks, doesn't it? Good question. I don't know. Maybe ask Goldman. Goldman says that it does. I really wish I could get back in touch with Christian McQueen. He'd be a good one to talk to. Christian, if you're watching, I'd really want you to call me. Okay, so is that it? I think that is the last one, guys. This has been a really fun show. We kind of started this one out with a loose topic, and it really kind of developed into a really good conversation. I will be I gotta put this up there. I will be on Wednesday. I'll be doing another show. I'm thinking about having a guest, and it might be Andrew Tate. If I can get Andrew on, I'd like to talk to him about his relationship, such as it is, with Michaela Peterson. I don't think anybody has talked to him since then. I kind of want to get the lowdown on that. And I haven't talked with Tate in a while. I've had 2 shows with Tate before in the past, and he's always a good dude to talk to. So I'm gonna see if I can do that. I also want to get Abu American on here for Religion and the Red Pill. So that should be coming up. If not this week, then probably early of next week. But I will be doing my regular Wednesday show, and that will be at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. So please do that. And then, of course, as always, please subscribe to this show. Hit that like button. Like I say, we all got to do everything you're supposed to do. Okay. And then this is my blog, which is therationalmale.com. If this is your first time watching this show, welcome. And then, I got to put this up there as well. Pat Campbell and I do a show every Friday on his terrestrial radio show out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. It is AM 1170, where Tulsa comes to talk. And you can just watch my Twitter feed, and I will put the link to that so you can listen over the internet if you are not actually in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have some pretty good conversations, and that is a terrestrial radio show, so it always is kind of interesting. We kind of take random calls, and then sometimes I get into it with his producer, Carly. So that's always a fun show. So please listen to that, or tune in. You can actually even call into that too, a terrestrial radio show. I'm also doing another terrestrial radio show. I think we're doing it every other Saturday now, but I also do a show called Into the Gap on Saturdays, every other Saturday. It is a show in Chicago, and I'll let you guys know when that comes up. Usually it's about 1 p.m. Central Time. I think that's 11. Would that be 11 my time? I know I get on at about 11, so I think it's like 2 o'clock Eastern if you're on the East Coast. I'll send out alerts for that so you guys can get an idea if you want to listen to me on a new show, on a new terrestrial radio show. It's great, man. I hopefully in 2020 I'll be doing more terrestrial radio. I really enjoy doing those kinds of shows. And then last but not least, I am still working on book 4. I'm still working on round 1 of edits. Like I was telling Pat before, I'm hoping to publish in Q1 of 2020. Had a lot of distractions. I'll be honest with you. I had a lot of distractions this year, and it's been a real challenge to hunker down and do what I need to do on the book. So, and then I want to give you guys the best product that I possibly can, particularly for this subject, because so many people are interested in it. So, good cooking takes time, right? So I will let you know when that comes up. But in the meantime, I will be doing Religion in the Red Pill as a side show occasionally. So watch for those if that is your thing. Guys, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys next week. Oh, also, Rule 0 is on Saturdays at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Ryan hosted last time. I think we're going to be on with Rich Cooper on Saturday, in case you're wondering. So also follow us on Facebook, which is the Rule 0 Facebook group, and we'll get you in, and then you'll get your notifications, and you'll get to know like who's hosting when and where, because we passed that one around. So with that said, thanks for joining me today, and I will see you guys Wednesday. All right, bye-bye.